Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Boca's Briefcase. I'm Hillary Zalman, and Happy New Year. Welcome 2021, a little late. I've been on hiatus because I've been traveling mostly around my house, going from room to room. Anyway, I could really use a vacation, but I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited for the guests we have, as I usually am. First, I want to thank the Boca Raton Tribune for this platform, for really giving us guests that tell us what's going on right now and answer our questions that we want to know most of all. And also congratulate them for their 500th episode. 500th edition they've just done, which is very exciting. And you will see them talking about that on social media and in their paper. But without further ado, I want to introduce to you Sam Garrett, Esquire. He handles federal immigration law. He's taught it as well. Graduate of Loyola Law School in California, where I met you. And it's just overall a great guy. Also former and future comedian and actor. Very well known in entertainment circles as well. But welcome to the program, Sam.
Thank you for having me, Hillary.
You're welcome. You seem like you have a very professional background there. It seems like you're coming right from the studio. So the question we want to talk about, and it's interesting because this is actually going to be shown, it's not live for those who are watching, we've pre-filmed this, but it's going to be shown after President's Day. And we're talking about immigration and how with the change of presidents, what happens with immigration. And there's been a lot on the news. And you hear everything about the headlines from cages to asylum issues to Mexico to executive orders. And we're gonna get into that a little bit. What are the trends? What actually has changed? What could change? And of course, some of this is speculative. But let's find out in a little more detail what's going on. So again, welcome, Sam. Let's jump right into it. Since I mentioned presidents, let's talk about the change from Trump to Biden. What has Biden specifically attempted to change so far? What are the major changes he's attempted to do so far as it relates to immigration?
Well, Hillary, from his first day, he started trying to delay some of the last minute regulations that the Trump administration put in for immigration, really bringing things back to kind of more normal where they were maybe even the first year or two of the Trump administration. They diverged quite significantly. So he's been doing things to try to bring those back, but he's limited in what he can do immediately.
Right. I've read about the Family Reunification Force or Task Force. Is that one of these changes? And can you explain a little what that is?
Absolutely. So it was fairly well publicized during the Trump administration. They really ramped up the policy of separating children from their families at the border. And what the task force is about finding those families and reunifying the children, which is a massive job that, you're depending on the prior administration for the paperwork, and talk about, thousands of needles in haystacks. So the task force is set to try to help those children get back with their loved ones.
Wow. So that's amazing. It seems like it's a big job. So what else is going to be different regarding, the news was really pushing last year, and it was very controversial, the issues, and I hate using this word they call cages. Can you talk about that, and is Biden addressing that issue?
Yeah, I think now this is one of the more speculative things, but during the election, he was very clear on how he felt about the kids in cages. I know many of his supporters, voted for him because they wanted kids to not be in cages. I think that a policy that had existed under Obama but was very small was expanded, and with numbers so great that instead of the facilities where a child might have been before, we had far more people than there was budget to allocate for properly taken care of. So you had children in conditions that were just not up to the standards of the United States. And
Right.
I really think what we're going to see is possibly even an elimination of any more of that kind of business.
Well, I've
And
heard them use the word kinder, and I'm going to go more into that. But they say immigration will be kinder. Have you heard this term used, or is that appropriate word?
well, I think that immigration has very hard and fast rules, and you can think you qualify for something and you don't. Your friend got it, why can't you? And when your case is analyzed, it turns out you can't. Or you think there's nothing for you, and there is something for you. It's a very, very complicated area of law. It's compared to tax law, and it's constantly changing. So is it going to be kinder? I think you're going to find more dignity. And what happened in the last couple of years of the Trump administration were previously approved petitions started getting what we call RFEs, requests for evidence, which delays the application until the requested evidence is given to the government. And more denials where you had to appeal and get it, like a slam dunk petition became a very expensive petition. So that's going to be gone. We're going to go back to regular business, and companies are going to be able to depend that when they need an employee, they're going to be able to estimate how long it's going to take them and really be able to do the work they need with the special immigrants that qualify for these.
But to address some misconceptions or some fears, it's not just that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Biden wants to just open the doors to all immigration, that people still have to go through the very arduous process of applying to get into this country with exceptions of certain asylum and this and that. But that's still true, right? It's still a high standard to get in.
Absolutely. And Biden's been very clear that he's not going to try to remake immigration with executive orders. As you probably know, Hillary, Congress has extra authority under the Constitution over immigration matters, and passing bipartisan legislation for the future is the only way that the president's going to be able to make lasting changes that exist beyond his time in office. So there are many things that he can do, but I think especially with his track record, being a senator, his relationships, we're going to see probably the most comprehensive immigration reform since George W. Bush.
Well, you brought up, and I want to talk about that, but you brought up also the word executive orders. And one of the first things Biden did too is there was a lot of executive orders. You heard he's signing. What problems can you solve with an executive order? Because doesn't it then have to go, like you said, to the legislative branch, or can you address that a bit? Because I am unclear on that.
Absolutely. So Congress makes the rules for immigration, but then the Department of Homeland Security apparatus kind of interprets those rules and makes regulations, and then those regulations wind up getting challenged and either verified by the judiciary or overruled by later legislation. What he can do with the executive orders is change how excuse me, is change how we are going to process people, and he can give status, as we saw with Obama with the Dreamers. So
Right.
one of the things he's talking about is he's going to have a path to citizenship for the people that are on temporary protected status.
What are dreamers?
What are Dreamers?
And I'm sorry too, because
Yeah.
I don't mean to put you on spot with everything. And by the way, for those out there, this is not legal advice, or I'm hitting Sam with a lot of speculative potential new laws. So Sam, whatever you can answer or just digest is great. And I'm sorry I'm throwing this at you, but what are dreamers?
Dreamers are children that were brought to the United States either on visas that weren't immigrant visas, or who came across the border with their parents and grew up in the United States, and for all intents and purposes are really members of this country, but they don't have legal status. And because of existing immigration law, a lot of those children, there was no way for them to get status. The only choice was to leave and be subject to a bar before they'd be able to apply to come back.
So even if you've grown up here your whole life, you're expected to then go to another country you've never been to before, almost, which would be then a foreign country.
Exactly, which is why it was so important that Obama gave those Dreamers a legal status that would allow them to go get a regular job, that would allow them to participate in society. But the Dreamers needed a path to citizenship, to become part of America. And there aren't just the Dreamers. Temporary protected status, TPS, is something that we grant to countries where a disaster has happened, where there's something really awful, where it just would be cruel to send them back. And there are many countries with TPS status. And one of the things that was happening during the Trump administration was he was threatening to withhold TPS status for countries that had had it for a long time, that nobody really thought were ready to take these people back. And in some cases, these people that have the temporary protected status have been here decades. So what Biden's going to do is give those people a way to stay, and not be dependent on their country continuing to have a temporary protected status designation.
That's interesting. So, and you've mentioned the different administrations. So Trump, Obama, George W. Give me a little bit, and this is not a political discussion, but how did they see immigration differently? I mean, it's a huge question, but.
Absolutely. And it's giant. And immigration moves so fast that by the time this airs, I could look really silly because things just move.
Well, because I do a lot of landlord tenant and evictions and this and that with businesses, and the law is so fluid, it changes. So it could literally change in a week, every week.
And that makes it challenging, but also makes it practicing it exciting, because you never really know what's around the corner, and you get to, you're not relying on old standards all the time. But to answer your question, the perception of different presidents and their immigration policies really is different for how it's portrayed normally in the media versus how immigration lawyers feel about it. For example, President Obama did some wonderful things that were friendly to immigrants, and we were just talking about the Dreamers, and they certainly owe a lot to him. But during the Obama administration, deportations, removals is what we call them, were higher than during the Bush administration. The kind of relief that we eventually got, immigration activists were asking for years and years and years. I think you'd find that President Bush W was really a friend to immigrants, but he just didn't have the support in Congress to pass legislation that would really change their lives. He was in favor of a path to citizenship for people that had, come to the United States by, illegally crossing the border. I think what we're going to see with Biden is a return not just to where Obama was in backing up Trump. I can see Biden, especially because of the kids in cages, moving all the way to something more like President Bush's attitude toward immigrants. And he's going to have the support in Congress to actually make changes that they just weren't going to happen with the Congress that Obama had.
That's interesting. Well, they say that he can walk the middle aisle on a number of issues. So that's actually very interesting. What about a lot has been on the news, I think, especially this past week. And again, by the time this airs, it could be totally different. With Mexico, I understood, and I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but I understand people that were waiting or applying on the outside border of Mexico are now going to be able to apply within the United States. Or can you correct me here on what the issue is?
Sure. It's really easy to have a misconception of what's going on there, because people hear Mexico and they think a bunch of Mexicans are going to come to the United States. And when the reality is that Mexico is actually one of the hardest countries for someone to apply for asylum to the United States from, because part of the asylum application is that there's nowhere in your country that's safe. And Mexico is such a large country that being able to prove that there isn't some part of Mexico that you could go to where you'd be safe, it really makes Mexican asylum applications difficult. What we have are a bunch of people that were coming from other countries that do have viable asylum claims. They might not all get approved, but they have viable asylum claims that ought to go through the judicial system. And they were waiting. And those people are going to get their day in court, which is what they expected from the United States.
Thank you for clarifying that. So is, and I work with a lot of immigration attorneys, and what's fascinating, and again, it's sort of contradictory to what Trump said, that it was so easy to get in. People have to go through extensive applications, and these files are huge, and it's a very long process. So I never from an attorney side ever thought it was an easy process, just come to the country. But for people from out of the country and for attorneys, is 2021 going to be a better year to file for visas than 2020 was, now that the administration's changed?
Absolutely.
That's a clear answer.
There are going to be situations in individual people's circumstances where maybe they needed to file last year or something like that. But generally, as I'm filing applications, as I'm considering applications, I'm much more excited and optimistic about every kind of application. Because one of the things that I loved about immigration law, one of the reasons why I chose to be in it, is that ultimately we're all on the same side. We've got the Statue of Liberty. The government's supposed to want people that qualify for these open visa slots to use them. And
can you take a step back there? Tell us, because I'm sure not everyone knows what the open visa slots are. Can you explain that, how the different countries, we actually allocate for every country to have a number of slots to people to come in? Can you say it in your legal jargon better than me?
Yeah. Congress has allocated a certain number of slots for all of the different visas for how many can come. And for example, with H-1Bs, off the top of my head, I think it's 65,000, which is why the only time of the year you can apply for H-1Bs is the first week of April, because there are always way more applications the first week of April than there are slots. And then within those slots, now that's a temporary visa situation, so that one doesn't have a country allocation. But for permanent visas, people coming here that are being sponsored by a relative or being sponsored by a company where they're going to come here to permanently be here. There are allocations per country, and some countries are overrepresented in certain categories. And what we've got is the State Department publishes something called the Visa Bulletin every month that tells you what applications from which countries are being taken from which date. So
that's really interesting, actually. Yeah, to see that.
In some instances, you've got applications from 1999 from certain countries that are still waiting to be processed, whereas if they were from a country just bordering them, it'd be a decade, earlier, into the future for when applications for that particular visa are being processed, which causes, some confusion when your friend applied for something for their mother or for their son, and they got it much faster than your application that's pending, and you want to know why. Often that's the reason why.
Right. Yeah, and I know, and it would take us 2 hours to go into the specifics of the types of applications and processes. And I mean, it's so complex. So I'm not doing that today, and it's not a live show, so there's no specific questions. But I'm going to bring up, if anyone watching this, Sam Garrett is here offering value for our community. And at the end, he's going to list his contact information. So feel free to reach out to him if you've got immigration questions. If you're interested in seeking out an immigration attorney, that's why he's here to assist. And if you can't find him, contact me. I'll connect you. And that leaves me to ask you, internationally, do you have any input on what other countries are now feeling, or people that are living in other countries are now feeling about our immigration process? Do you think people want to come here more with this administration or less? Or maybe it hasn't changed at all. They're just still going forward. Have you heard anything along those lines? The international response, I'd say.
Absolutely. I think if you look at countries like India or any of the Arabic countries that certainly had reason to feel like they were being singled out by the Trump administration, you're going to see a lot more applications. I've seen in the media over in India where people are excited about applying for visas again. And there was just such an anti-immigrant sentiment in the last administration from Stephen Miller and what he was doing, that just having them gone and having someone in office who's appointing more regular administrators, more regular people that are just going to bring our immigration system back to how it was before it became divisive. I mean, it used to be a foregone conclusion. We had the Statue of Liberty. We want you to come. And I think the international community is feeling that. And I'm expecting there to be a rise in all kinds of visas.
That's nice. I mean, because none of us are really from here, are we? So, just go back a few generations and we're all immigrants for most of us. But
my grandmother came through Ellis Island.
Yeah, us too.
It's like
maybe they were friends.
Who we are. This is part of what makes America great.
That's nice. Are you running for office? Who's Cass Sunstein? I think I've heard his name. Am I pronouncing it right? He's entering into Homeland Security. I understand there's some talk of him.
Yeah, he worked in the Obama administration over in regulatory affairs, and a lot of the liberal side was a little hesitant when they heard that he was joining because he didn't really enact enough regulations in his prior position. But his role with the Department of Homeland Security, I think it makes a lot more sense. And I also think it signals that we're not going to see an executive that's going to try to make all of the regulations on their own. I think it's a signal that Biden is very sincere when he says that he wants to do bipartisan legislation and just fix the situation and make lasting change.
Well, let's hope that occurs. That would be great. And, I can't believe it's already been almost 30 minutes. Usually we like to end by, we call it Boca's Briefcase. So you can offer anything out of your own briefcase of value, whether it's to people who are applying or maybe to other attorneys. If you could leave anyone watching here who's interested in immigration law with that last piece of information, what would you share from your own experience or knowledge? It's a good one, right?
It is. It is. I would say probably the most important thing that I'd share is there has been a problem in immigration for decades where non-licensed attorneys are pretending to be able to give legal advice. We call them notarios. Is a problem where in Mexico, for example, a notary public, a notario, is a very experienced abogado, a very experienced attorney. So there were communities that started getting preyed on by people that they thought were helping them. And it used to be that by filing things, you could get someone a temporary work permit, and people would come and pretend to be giving licensed information and just sign up a bunch of people, and they didn't realize they were really being signed up to, I'm sorry, what?
That's my child.
They thought they were being given what they'd always wanted, the right to work in the United States. And for most of them, they were being given eventual eviction from the United States. So when you're going to look for legal advice, find a licensed attorney. It doesn't have to be me, but any attorney that you meet is going to be a member of the state bar. They're going to be regulations. You're going to be able to find their contact information. You're going to be able to find them on the internet. Don't try to save a few $100s by going to just some guy.
Right. No, this is a really extensive process, and if done wrong, it's very problematic.
Absolutely. You could be saving a little bit of money now, but actually creating a giant expensive problem that's going to need a much bigger wallet to fix. And in some cases, you're not going to be able to fix it.
Right. Yeah, that's sad. But thank you so much for giving us a little light into potential changes here. It's a lot to get through. And again, feel free to reach out to Sam. Sam, how do people reach you?
Well, they can call my number 866-788-4279.
There you go. Want to say it again?
1-866 7. I have to look at it all the time myself.
I don't know. Yeah, our main office number. Because it goes through. Actually, we got some kind of Google number, and it's not even a number that I give out. But
give me 1 second.
That's so funny.
I told myself I gotta remember that.
It's not good. Just give out your cell phone number. And thanks again to the Boca Raton Tribune, again, the platform to allow us to do these programs. We look forward to reaching out with more updates in regards to the law. Go ahead.
Yeah. They can call me at 855-788-8472. That's 855-788-8472.
Thanks, Sam. And thanks to you all. And I'll see you guys next week. Happy President's Day. Happy belated Valentine's Day. Happy New Year. Welcome back. Bye-bye.